Good morning.
Good morning.
I continue to talk on this book, Opening the Hand of Thought. As I think you already know, this is written by my teacher, and I was one of the translators of this book. And this was written in the early 70s, right after I was ordained. I was ordained December 1970. And at that time I was still a university student, so almost 50 years ago. And so since then I have been studying and practicing following this teaching. So this is almost like a guidebook of my life for last 50 years. And to understand what Okumura Roshi is writing and what I have been doing, I studied Dogen's teaching, and to understand Dogen's teaching, I had to study Buddhism in general. So this is a kind of starting point, and I go to Dogen and Buddha. It's not opposite. Some people study, first read about Buddha's teaching and go to Zen and Dogen and particular lineage or teachers. But in my case, I don't know it better or worse, but this is how my life evolved. Anyway, I have been talking of this book, I think more than 10 years. In my record, this is 225th talk on this book. So each time I talk only one paragraph. And each paragraph has quality or to talk for 1 hour. So at least to me, this is a really amazing book. And after 50 years of studying and practicing following this book, I'm still not tired of reading and studying this book. That is, in a sense, strange. Anyway, this morning I'd like to talk on one paragraph on page 133, if you have this book. Let me read this second paragraph of 133. It says, whatever happens in our lives can be accepted since we are universal self in all circumstances. You may imagine that this will leave you completely directionless. But this is not the case, since such a self is not devoid of scenery. Self as the reality of life unfolds the rich quality of life, the scenery of the self, the circumstances of the present, both past and future exist as the richly textured scenery of the present. In this part of this book, Okumura is talking about the meaning or significance of Zazen practice. That is the main practice in Soto Zen tradition. Our Zazen practice is called shikantaza, or just sitting. In terms of our life in the modern civilization. And so first he discussed about the meaning of Zazen practice and the meaning of Zazen practice. And then he started to talk about how our Zazen practice in the Zendo can work outside of that endo. That means in our day-to-day life, day-to-day activities. And based on Dogen's teaching of three minds, that is what I talked last week, that is, and three mind in Japanese is sanshin. San is three and shin is mind. And the name of this temple is Sanshinji, and the name of this community is Sanshinzen community. That Sanshin came from this Sanshin. And this teaching of this three minds, or Sanshin, came from Dogen's teaching, as I said last week. So I have to repeat same thing each time, each week, because we have something, people, we have, each time we have new people, so I have to repeat. That's why it takes so many times to talk on this book. Those three minds are magnanimous mind, and nurturing mind, or parental mind, and a joyful mind. So, as Dogen said in his text Tenzo Kyokon, or instruction for Tenzo or cook, we should, as a Buddhist practitioner or Bodhisattva, we should always maintain these three minds: magnanimous mind, parental mind, or nurturing mind, and joyful mind. And first he talked about magnanimous mind, and this is the same as a Zazen mind, the mind which doesn't make discrimination, or this, and make choice. I like this, I hate that. That is how we usually do, and we chase after something we want or we think important, and try to escape something we don't want or we don't like or not important. When we think in this way and making choice, our life become chasing after something we want or escaping from something we don't want. So our life become always running, chasing after something or escaping from something. And in Buddhist teaching, that is samsara. And the situation or condition inside and outside of ourselves are always changing. Our life changes, and depending upon that change, we experience up and down. Sometimes we feel like we are heavenly beings. We feel our desire is completely fulfilled. But more often we have desire to get more. That is like a hungry ghost. And sometimes we feel like we are hell dwellers. So as far as we live in this way to separate our life into two sides, good and bad, like dislike, and try to choose something better than worse, then our life becomes suffering. Because even when we feel we are heavenly beings, we may lose that good things or good situation anytime. So we have a fear when we lose that happiness. Of course, when our life is not like a heavenly beings, then we actually have, painful or sad experiences. So our zazen allow us to, in a sense, to stop live based on that discrimination and making choice. But in our zazen, we open our hand, let go of thought, let go of that kind of discriminating thinking. Then we found that this is what I draw almost every week. this is a kind of, this is Indra's net. Indra's net is a kind of a metaphor of interconnectedness in Mahayana Buddhism. Everything existing are interconnected to each other. So we are existing as a part of this interconnectedness. And yet this net of the, or thread of the net is transparent. So we feel we are independent, but actually we are interconnected with everything. We cannot exist without air or water or food and help and support from other people. Without those other things that come and support our life, this cannot exist. That is the teaching of no self or no anatman. There's no essential nature of the person which can exist without relation with others. Or we can say only there is relations. In our case, our body consists of billions of cells, and it's coming the things, the matter that consists. This body is always coming and going and coming and going. Not only our physical body, but also what we think, also coming and going. Whatever we think, that doesn't last forever. Or even the language we use to think in our unique way is a gift from the society. So actually there's no such, in my case, Shohaku as an individual person. That is what no self means. But conventionally, I call this Shohaku. So there is a self, Shohaku, which is different from other people. You are not me and I'm not you. And I cannot what you can do and you cannot what I'm doing. So each one of us has unique personality and capability. And yet such self, conventional self, doesn't really exist. We see, so I call this I as one, and this no self as zero. When we see both sides of each individual being, we start to see the connection that support me as Shohaku. So this I call this interconnectedness as infinity. So in my understanding of Buddhist teaching as a whole, about the self is 1 equal 0 equal infinity. It's kind of interesting idea, or difficult to think. And this interconnectedness is not only within the space. To me, the metaphor of Indra's net seems like interconnectedness within a space. But we are connected with things in the past as a cause and result. So within space and time, we are connected with everything. I think this is a basic structure of how we are living together, interconnected with all beings. And to me, this is a kind of a result of my studying and practicing for 50 years. But this might be mistaken. If you find better understanding, that's fine. This is only one possible way of seeing how we are together with all beings based on Buddhist teachings, as far as I studied. And what our Zazen allows us to see is there's no such person called Shohaku. When we sit facing the wall, there's no object. If there's no object, this ceases to be a subject. Subject and object are, how can I say, interconnected. So if there's no subject, there's no object. And there's no object, there's no subject. And when we are sitting facing the wall, there's no subject, no object. But problem is when there's no object, even we sit facing the wall, wall is not the object because we don't really see it. We see it, but we don't think about the wall usually. Sometimes we do. So instead of the walls, or sometimes we hear the sound of wind or birds singing, or the sound from the traffic, but they are not object of this person sitting. But more important thing is our thinking is still coming and going. When the outside things cease to be object, then those things coming and going, like a memory or idea or plan for the future, become the object. So within our mind, there is a separation, and one side become subject, and the other side become object. But in our Zazen, an important thing is whenever we find there's a separation between subject and object, and we are kind of interacting with the thought or memory or whatever it's coming in my mind, and we start to interact with that thing. In this case, we call this thinking. When we start to think, thoughts are coming and going, and that is fine. But when we start to interact, then there's a separation between this person sitting becomes subject, and that thought becomes object, and there is an interaction. Whenever we find we do this kind of things, and our mind is separated into two parts, subject, object, and we think, I like that memory, or I hate this idea, or that kind of things, almost always occurring. And whenever we find we do this, we open the hand of thought. That is the title of this book, Opening the Hand of Thought. That is what we do. By letting go of thought or opening the hand of thought, we stop thinking. So this is kind of strange, but thoughts are there coming and going, but we don't think, but we are just sitting. So this is kind of an interesting thing. This is not a method to contemplate on something or concentrate on certain object, because in our Zazen there's no object. But whenever we find there are separation and we start to interact, we stop doing that thing and return to just sitting. By doing this, we become free from our thinking. At least during sitting, we don't take any action based on those thinking coming and going. Those thinking coming and going is a kind of a result or fruit or residue of what we experienced, what we studied or did, or all the experience we had in the past was stored in the deepest layer of our consciousness. and somehow, those in Yogacara teaching, this is called seeds. Seeds come up somehow, even when there's no object. Those seeds come up, become the object. But we can let go. Sitting in the Zendo, when we are sitting in the Zendo, it's safe to let go. If when you walk on the street, it's dangerous. So I don't recommend you this, but during Zazen we can do this. So our Zazen is a very interesting thing. We don't stop thinking. Thoughts are coming and going, but we don't think. Anyway, when we practice this kind of strange, very simple, there's no technique besides sitting within this upright posture. Very simple, but very difficult, and not so exciting. Day after day, we do the same thing. Anyway, by practicing this way, we find there's no such fixed person called Shohaku. So we see the no self. And we also see this is like a knot of the threads, entangled. That is me. That means, this me is one, and yet this one doesn't really exist as an independent beings. Therefore, we are connected with all beings. So, from one side, this I don't exist. But from another side, this entirety of interconnectedness throughout space and time is me. That is a really interesting idea, but when we see this kind of a structure of the, I call this structure of the self, 1 = 0 = infinity, then our life looks different from we commonly think. That is, I'm the subject, I'm the person, I'm the center of the world. Everything around us is a kind of a resource or material I can use freely to make me happy. So usually we think, not in this way, but we think subject and object, that is all beings, and we can see and define and evaluate, and we can use whatever way to be, how we can be happy by using other things. That is the difference. Anyway, so our Zazen allows us to accept everything here and now by opening the hand of thought. But there is a problem. If we stuck there, then we lose the direction. So that is what Okumura Roshi is talking now. That means, and in the last paragraph, he said, this life is not without scenery. So in each moment, we have a scenery, different scenery or condition or situation, even though we sit and letting go. And especially when we live in our day-to-day lives. And last week I introduced one of the Okumura experience. That was very painful experience. He his practice was, of course, based on Zazen, but he lived, that was right after World War II, and Japanese society was really poor. And he lived based on begging, or takuhatsu, that is Buddhist tradition. And he did takuhatsu not only for food he need to eat, but he lived at Antaiji, where there is no family members. That means no regular income at all, especially right after World War II. And his teacher, Shohaku Roshi, came back to Antaiji only once a month to read sesshin for 5 days. And people came from outside, lay people and priests came from outside. But both Shohaku Roshi and Okumura Roshi never charged to those people from outside. Of course, some people made donation, but they never request paying something. Even when I went there, the flyer of the Antaiji session said, bring 1 cup of rice for each meal you want to eat. That means bring 3 cups of rice if you want to stay 1 day and eat 3 meals. So they don't have money. And those food was bought by the money Okumura Roshi did takuhatsu. So he need to do takuhatsu to buy the food for the sesshin. And one time he injured his toe while he was walking on the street, and I don't want to talk the same story twice. Anyway, that injured, the part of the toe he injured was infected, and he had a terrible pain. And he said he couldn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. So he just lie down on his futon. And he could do anything because he was so poor. He practiced in extreme poverty, so he didn't have money to go to doctor. So what he did was just be there with this pain. And I introduced poem, his poem about this experience, and he said, just being there with terrible pain, he find some release from clinging to the self. So he said that was very important and meaningful experience for him. If you want to read that poem and what he wrote about that experience, please read Okumura Roshi's commentary on Tenzo Kyokun, or Instruction for Cook. The title is something like Defining Your Life. Anyway, that is one of the sceneries in his life while he was practicing. And that was really painful, but that is kind of an exceptional experience or scenery. Usually we have, how can I say, less dramatic. So there are some problems, and there are something we can choose to go ahead. So that is what he's saying in this paragraph. In such a very extremely difficult condition, what we can do is just be and open our hand of thought and just be with that pain. But more often we have to do something. And that is what he is saying in this paragraph as direction. We need a direction to go. When, in each condition or situation that is a scenery of our life, we need to find the right direction. That is what he is saying. Even we live in this way, our life is not directionless. And in the second sentence, he said, you may imagine that this will leave you completely directionless, because when we open our hand, we can be just here and now. Sometimes we do like other than as Okumura Roshi did when he was injured, but that is not our life commonly. Leave you completely directionless, but this is not the case, since such a self is not devoid of scenery. So he said, each moment we have certain scenery. Self as a reality of life, within this interconnectedness, and for the rich quality of life, the scenery of the self, the circumstances of the present, both past and future exist. So the relation within the space at this moment, and there is a history in the past, and there is a future. So, we often, as I said last week, we often make a story about our past and about our future. And we need to do that. Usually we make the story based on our self-clinging. What is good for me? How I wish to be in the future. But what Okumura Roshi is talking about, our direction is Bodhisattva vow. That is what, in Mahayana Buddhism, there's a difference between Bodhisattva and ordinary beings. One of the definitions of a Bodhisattva, that is Mahayana practitioner, Mahayana Buddhist practitioner, is Bodhisattva is one who is living led by vow. Vow is gone. A common meaning of this Chinese character is wish, but in the case of Mahayana Buddhist, this gun is called vow, Bodhisattva vow. And all Bodhisattva need to take 4 Bodhisattva vows. Those are what we chant or recite after this talk. So you will see. Anyway, so this, he said, each moment is perfect moment, complete moment. This moment and this self and this situation, this place is only actually only actuality. But within this interconnectedness throughout space and time, there is a direction. And this direction for us Mahayana Buddhists is for Bodhisattva vows. And in a sense, the energy or engine of this, which Okumura Roshi likes, using the metaphor of driving a car. So this is for Bodhisattva vow is the direction we need to go, and the engine is I think our bodhicitta, way-seeking mind or aspiration. And in a sense, the precept we receive, bodhisattva precept, is a kind of a steering wheel. So we have to make choice which way we need to go. And four vows is, in a sense, it's often said, boundless vow or endless vow. That means there's no time we can reach there. So 4 vows, such as being so numberless, we vow to save them or free them. There's no time we can save all beings. So there's no time we can reach the goal. But that's why we or Okumura Roshi call this a direction, not a goal. But based on on going to this direction, these 4 vows are called general vows. That means all bodhisattva need to take and make effort to walk that direction. But as a more concrete practice or concrete way of life, we need to take our personal vow based on those 4 bodhisattva vows. For example, Okumura Roshi said his vow is keep practicing and transmit this Zazen practice to the next generation. So he continued to practice at Antaij and produce, I don't like the word produce, but somehow educate or train his disciples. And his disciples continued his way of life. So he said that he had 2 personal vows. One is keep Zazen and continue transmit this to the next generation. And the second of his vow is to write a text. Of course, there are many texts in Buddhism, more than we can read in our lifetimes. But all those important and famous texts are written many years ago. And in each generation, those explanation or expression can be meaningful. But some of them, or most of them, doesn't make so much sense for us living today. So his second vow is to write a text that is understandable and meaningful for people living today in these modern times. That is what he think he had his vows, personal vows. And to do so, he continued to practice at Antaiji, and he gave lectures and wrote books until he died. And I kind of inherit his vows by continuing to practice his style of Zazen and translate Okumura Roshi's and Dogen's text into English. To do so, I share this practice and Dogen and Okumura Roshi teachings with Westerners. That is my vow. So that is my vow within this lifetime. So I continue to practice in this way. That is not an endless vow, but in order to make plan, I need to need to think what I can do with this particular body and mind, and within this particular situation of the society. That is the most meaningful thing for me. For when I started to work on translation, I don't think I could translate Shobo Genzo. It's too difficult, even to understand to me as a Japanese. So I don't think I could translate Shobo Genzo. So I started to translate Uchem Roshi's writing. Roshi's writing is written in modern Japanese, and because he studied Western philosophy when he was a student, so his writing was kind of understandable even for Westerners or for us. I was educated after World War II, so my education was very much Westernized, or in a sense Americanized. So I started to translate Uchemura's writings and some of Dogen's early writings such as Fukanza Zengi or Bendowa and Genjo Koan, is not so difficult, relatively easy. So I first 10 years, or 10 or 15 years, I focused on translating those texts. So after, I started to do Genzo-e in 2002. That is about 15 years ago. And I felt like now I can translate and explain Shobo Genzo. So it took me about 30 years to reach the point now I can translate and explain what Dogen meant. So, as a kind of a direction, we need a direction in a sense toward the eternity, go endless or boundless power. And within this particular lifetime, we need to think, what is the best thing I can offer with using this particular body and mind. I was a Japanese. I studied Buddhism in Japan, so I can read Shobo Genzo in Japanese. And somehow I had to come to this country and studied English, so to translate Shobo Genzo and Uchem Roshi's teachings into English is what I can do, and I thought this is the best thing I could do. Otherwise I am good for nothing person. But I cannot really focus on, just sitting and translation 24 hours a day or 7 days a week. I have to do so many things, and the situation are changing. In order to talk in a more concrete way, maybe again, talking about Uchem Roshi's takas might be helpful as a kind of direction, and in a sense a long-term plan, middle-term plan, and short-term plan. As a short-term plan, my plan for this morning is talking on this paragraph of this text, and I try to do my best. That is my short-term plan. And middle-term plan is now I have several book projects. So as much as I can, I try to work on those book projects. And fortunately, my life doesn't last forever. So maybe I can work maybe at most 10 or 15 years more. So I don't need so much plans. But if I can, complete those several book projects, and as a abbot of this temple, I need to make effort to make sure this temple can continue to exist and function as a Soto Zen Buddhist temple. So that is another long, kind of a long time plan for me. So I am, in a sense, in the transition. I have been working on establishing and keeping this temple or this sangha, but now my effort is how I can create a situation this sangha or temple can continue without me. So I try to, in a sense, draw back and focus on book project. And fortunately, Hoku is working for me and with other people. So I really appreciate all of your effort. Anyway, so that is kind of a long-term plan. But what I'm talking about is in the last sentence of this paragraph, he used in this English translation this expression, richly textured scenery of the present. Richly textured scenery of the present. What does this mean, richly textured? That was what I thought yesterday, all day. Textured, what is textured? I think textures mainly have two meanings according to the dictionary. One is some kind of touch. When we touch something, we feel something. I think texture of the fabric or something. So that is something I feel by doing something with something. And another meaning I found in the dictionary is structure. Is that correct? So there is a structure and there is some feeling I receive from touching that structure. And this richly textured scenery is not a literal translation. The word Okumura Roshi used is hei men teki and he negate the nai means not heimenteki. And this heimenteki, heimen means like a flat, and even or full, how do you pronounce prana?
Planar.
Anyway, this means two dimension.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
There's no up and down or high and low. So heimenteki, according to Japanese English dictionary, is two-dimensional. Two-dimensional means dualistic. And this is negated. And the opposition of heimenteki in Japanese is rittaiteki. Ritsu means to erect or stand up, and tai is body, and English translation of rittaiteki is three-dimensional. This is not flat, but there are what we call height or depth, not two-dimensional. If this is two-dimensional, we can say good and bad, right and wrong, I like or I hate. but there is another dimension that is, I think, Okumura Roshi called the depth of our, I think, motivation. Or this, to avoid this two-dimensional way, or dualistic way of thinking, we have to think it another word better than three-dimensional. I don't think of.
That's good.
Okay. For example, as I said, takuhatsu might be a good example. The basic idea or concept of takuhatsu is just a hold. Takuhatsu literally means hold empty bowl. Hold, from India, Buddhist monk didn't work, but they every morning they walk into the town or the city or village holding an empty bowl, and if lay people make a donation of food, they just receive and eat. And the important point of or principle of takuhatsu is what Buddha taught was you should not or you should visit each and every house, whether family in those houses are rich or poor. You should not go only to the rich families' house to receive a good food. But we should receive, visit each and every house in the village or town without making discrimination, whether rich family or middle class family or poor family, depending upon their condition. What they can offer is different, and yet as a Buddhist monk, we should not make any discrimination. So when I did takuhatsu in Japan, we didn't do for food. Sometimes people give us food, but mainly money, not a big amount of money, but coins. So we have to really walk in and stand in each and every house. Even we know, this place cannot, I couldn't expect any donation like a post office. And another interesting place is a bank. They have a lot of money, but they never make donation for begging bank. And yet we cannot, skip, any house, whether it's a empty house, no one lives there. But anyway, we have to go each and every house without making discrimination. And also, we cannot request people to make offering. That means, they making offering is not their duty or obligation, but their what is the word? Choice. Yeah. So they have a right of freedom not to make offerings, and whether they make offering or not, we just keep standing, and if there's no one come out or that person rejected, we just lower our head and go to the next house. If all the people in the village decide not to make any offering, then that means the monk should not eat. So to become a monk means to determine to live by food offered by people. That means if all people stop making offering, then our as a Buddhist monk, our determination is not to live. So it's a kind of not a simple vow. So we, even today, we practice, when we do takuhatsu, we practice with same attitude. That means we cannot ask people to make donation, but we just walk with empty bowl and nothing to serve. It's really difficult to think if we have nothing to exchange, and there's no way we can ask, but we just walking. And because of the Buddhist robe and bamboo hat and straw sandals, somehow people know who we are, and they trust not this person, but trust the robe. Basically the robe they make donation. That means they trust the Buddhist tradition. What Buddhist monks have been doing in that society. Anyway, that is the basic attitude when we do takuhatsu. But the scenario of takuhatsu are different. One well-known person who practiced takuhatsu as his main major practice was Ryokan. He didn't have a sangha, he didn't have a temple, he was like a hermit. So he went to the villages or towns and make beggings, and he really doesn't care whether he receives or not. And often he forgets about doing takuhatsu, but playing with kids. There are many children in the village, and at the time, that was around the beginning, end of 18th and beginning of 19th century, so about 200 years ago. There's no school for children, especially the children of the farmers, farming families. So children need to play by themselves. There's no caretakers of children. And as when children become, before become 10 years old, when they become old enough to work with their parents, they have to work. And so small children need to play themselves on the street. And a person like Ryokan was a kind of a good toy for them. So those children always ask Ryokan to play with them. So he was like a volunteer of babysitters. And he doesn't care because how much money or food he receives or not doesn't matter. Because I think for Ryokan, begging is itself his practice. How much food or money or offering he receives doesn't question. But in the case of Okumura Roshi, when he did takuhatsu, Japanese society was really poor, and because that was right after World War II. And he did takuhatsu to, in a sense, to make money to do sesshin with Shohaku. So what is the English word? He has a norm that he has to make certain amount of money before takuhatsu. So his takuhatsu is different from Ryokan's takuhatsu. Of course, in the middle of 20th century, all children went to school. So when they did takuhatsu, Uchimura did takuhatsu, there's no children on the street. So he didn't need to play with children. But if he he spent so much time for just doing takuhatsu, he didn't have time to take care of temples. Temple buildings, cleaning, and cooking for his meals, and kind of save some money for sesshin. So he need to think certain, how can I say, efficiency. And he's very intellectual person, so he had a kind of very well-planned method. He kind of, what is the word, evaluate, each and every shopping places, how generous those people in certain shopping place are. So he could expect certain amount of money was donated. So, and other places he couldn't expect so much. So there are various distinction of each place. Some places people are good, especially in Kyoto. Lay people know when Zen monks are walking with holding oryoki, what he's doing. But I was grown up in Osaka. Osaka and Kyoto is completely different. Osaka is a city of merchant, so they don't really like beggars. So they are not so kind for begging monks. For merchant, making money is their purpose, almost a purpose of their life. So to even a little bit money from their kind of wealth is against their principle of life. But in Kyoto, because there are so many Buddhist temples, and Buddhist temples have some contribution to the city, people in the city. So people in Kyoto respect Buddhist monks, but in Osaka they don't. So there is a kind of a distinction, unique quality of each and every street. And he kind of making a classified. But if he went certain shopping street too often, they stopped making offerings. So he had to make a calculation how much donation he could expect from certain place, and yet how often he could go, and try to kind of calculate how much he can expect each month before session. So there is a kind of two, in a sense, contradicted principle. One is we should not make any discrimination. We just receive whatever people offer. So if no one offers anything, we need to return to empty bowl, to that temple with empty bowl. And yet if, because of his practice, he had to save the time for practice Zazen and study Buddhism, and time and money for having circular session. To do so, he had to make calculation, and he tried to find the best way to save certain amount of money in each month. So there is a two contradicted principle. no discrimination and expectation, and discrimination and calculation, and making plan. So this is what he said, not two-dimensional. I just go to the court whether making donation or not. They are up to the people, so I don't care. If I don't make donation, I'll die. If we had that only one principle, then it's kind of easy thing. But there is another principle that in order to continue to practice and study Dharma and taking care of the temple buildings, he had a limitation. He had a limited time he could spend for doing the cards. So he needed to find a kind of middle way between these two contradicted principles. And that is what Okumura Roshi meant when he said, each time we have a scenery, and within that scenery we have direction. In order to walk toward Okumura Roshi, the Bodhisattva vow, he has to do certain things, need to do certain things in certain way within certain time. So discrimination and not discrimination are both there, and we need to find the middle way. Not only amongst the gods, but in any kind of life or work or job, there are certain kind of a contradicted principle, and sometimes we have, not sometimes, but often we have to find the middle way. That means, for example, to produce a good quality product or make the process of production efficient might be contradicted. Or if you are a teacher or a doctor or any kind of a job you have, there are certain things that might be contradicted, and we have to find a way. That is what Okumura Roshi meant. Our life is not two-dimensional, dualistic. We cannot make this is good, that is bad, kind of easy discrimination. But we have to think in more detail, and that is what Okumura Roshi called profundity and the texture of this entirety. Oh, it's already 11:25. I'm sorry, I talk too much. Any question or comment, please?
I have a question about the word scenery.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I at least, when I hear that word, I think of scenery in a theater.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about it that is fake
Mm-hmm.
or temporary,
Mm-hmm.
certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I'm not thinking about the theater,
Mm-hmm.
say I'm driving in my car
Mm-hmm.
and we see scenery and we're
Mm-hmm.
going by, and so it's always changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, when the translation was being made
Mm-hmm.
and this word scenery was being chosen, were you thinking of those?
See, I think scenery is a very literal translation.
Oh,
Dogen, not Dogen, but Okumura used the word 風景. Fu literally means wind, and K is like, what is K? Anyway, as a modern Japanese, Fuke means a scenery. And this is the scenery we see from the train. That is always changing.
Okay.
But in the case of the scenery, when we are on the train, we don't need to do anything. But things outside are moving, and we don't move. But in the case of scenery, in the way Okumura Roshi uses is we also do something, or scenery within ourselves are different. So scenery is changing based on both inside and outside.
Oh, okay. That's also important because when I think of scenery, I think I'm here and scenery is outside.
Yeah,
So it's very
separation.
much subject, object.
We are observer and scenery is what we observe.
Right, and there's also some sense then that the scenery is not so important. Maybe, it's always changing, I'm the important thing, all that scenery is out there. But you seem to be saying
Yeah,
it's
scenery.
not
We are part of the scenery.
Yes, yes. Okay.
I remember. Have you seen the Kurosawa's movie entitled Dream? Dream?
Kurosawa movie,
Yeah.
Dreams, yes.
Yeah, part of that movie, he became Van Gogh, and he's a part of the painting.
Right.
I think that is an image of Okumura Roshi's way of talking about scenery. We are part of that scenery.
I understand.
Depending upon what is happening inside of ourselves, the outside things might be changed or different. Okay,
Thank you very much.
please.
Someone was telling me recently, this is another vocabulary question, about a talk or something written maybe by Fujita Isho, and he was comparing the Buddha sort of like before his sitting under the Bodhi tree and while sitting under the Bodhi tree, and according to Fujita-san, sitting under the Bodhi tree was Zazen, but before was Shuzen.
Shuzen,
Yeah. Do you know what Shuzen that would be?
I think so. But I don't agree with him. Shuzen. This shu is to run,
Right.
and zen is zen, zazen. And Shuzen is a Buddhist term that in each tradition of Buddhism has some method of meditation practice, and there is always a kind of stages from a starting point to the final highest stage. That is what is called Shuzen. And according to Shakyamuni's biography, right after he left his father's palace, he practiced meditation with two teachers. I think that is Shuzen, learning meditation. But after that, he practiced very severe ascetic practice, and he sat by himself under the Bodhi tree. So, what Isho-san said.
Well, someone was telling me about it, so I'm not 100% clear. But I think the idea was that, he gave up Shuzen and practiced Zazen, and that was sort of his awakening experience.
He gave up ascetic practice.
Yeah.
He gave up gave up, Shozen much before that, 6 years before that.
I think maybe he was including the ascetic practices as shuzen because they're dualistic, maybe. But again, I'm not like 100% sure.
Ascetic practice is not necessarily meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But he's all about investigating methods and saying that zazen is not a method, so it's probably part of that argument.
Right.
Yes, I've run into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure, but really, if Isho-san said,
I'll try to find it.
okay, please.
I have one more question, which is, I think when you started reading the paragraph today, maybe it was the first sentence, said something about whatever happens in the present can be accepted. And I wondered if you could say more about accepting and what you think he means there. You talked a lot about takuhatsu, and it seems, what I thought about the way I understood takuhatsu in the past, takuhatsu, is that you accept whatever is given to you and you eat it, whatever it is. So do you think that is relevant?
Yeah, that attitude toward takuhatsu, monks, he received whatever people offered and eat, and if no one offer anything, then maybe he could eat something from the nature, like nuts or berries or grasses, probably. That is what they do, but their determination is not to work for making profit. So that is, in a sense, acceptance. Whatever happened, I accept this.
And so suppose in my life something really terrible happens, something unfair or violent, let's say, then what does it mean to accept that? Does it mean I say, oh, that's okay, because I'm accepting everything? I see Hoko shaking her head.
We
no.
talk about this a lot on our Thursday night group.
Okay. Maybe I should.
So
be
it's a
coming
good
to
question, actually. So
So it's up to the direction of our life. If we are bodhisattva and try to walk toward the benefit of all beings, then if there's something injustice or harmful to other people or some people or this entire network, then we have to do something. We have to try to find a cause. Accepting so does not simply means it's okay. Some people kill many people, but that is fine. But we need to find why such things happen. Why human beings can do such a thing. We need to find that cause and try to find fix that cause of the problems. Otherwise, we have to fight against those people, and we might do the same thing. Do you have something to say? You move
Well, at the very end of your talk, I mean, how to get at this exactly, given our language. Anyway, a very loaded word in English, or potent, is compromise.
Compromise.
Compromise, yeah. And I haven't heard of any situations where the translations involve compromise. But in the, what do I want to call it, real world, or, apart from all these other descriptions is when there are many expressions where, like it's not, flat, it's a three-dimensional, and so forth and so on, where the decision, you cannot, the person is confronted with, do I starve to death? And to stay true to the principle. And if you're by yourself, it's one kind of challenge. If you're responsible for others, maybe sashimi, maybe a family, you die, they die. Then there's a pressure, again, a common word, but it's also loaded because, conservatives are liberal. Everybody uses it, more or less can use it politically from opposite sides. And someday I would be interested in hearing, what the Chama or the practicing monks consider in terms of compromise, because it comes up all the time, one way or another. That's all. But all these questions here, it's yes, I should do that, but I'm not going to, or I can't. Should I feel bad? Blah blah blah. That's why I say it's also. I don't know if others would agree. It can be a loaded term in English. Compromise. You can be judgmental. It's a compromise, Rosa-san. You shouldn't do that. Or
So compromise is negative?
not. Some people treat it as negative. Other people treat it as practical, concrete. It's I don't see the emptiness of all things, or I don't see the oneness, but I'm taught I should be kind to my fellow man because, human, not man, man and woman. It's more of a question of what would be the translation in Japanese, or the meaning, because there's several I know lots of people in service industries, like who deal with marginal groups, say gay rights or black Americans, or all of those. There's always a compromise. I mean, to me, it's a very, as I say, there's a lot of expressions around that, and how people or big names would handle that. What comes to mind when I was in the West Coast and heard a lot of Sufi action out there, and related to Islam. And so one of the places that was a flexible one was somebody would say they'll do it, and they don't do it, or they won't do that, but then they do it. And then they used to quote Muhammad, supposedly. I have no idea if Muhammad ever really said this, but the quote was, show us your miracle. And so Muhammad commanded the mountain to come to him. He made the command, and it didn't happen. And he did it again, said twice, nothing. So, the people are watching him, he packed up his bag and he put his hat on, and he's going, and what are you doing? He said, well, if the mountain won't come to Muhammad, Muhammad will go to the mountain.
To the mountain.
So that's one.
Is that compromise?
Sort of. I mean, that's a spin. We say a spin on it. It's a joke. It's a joke, but but people do that a lot. Well, I'm going to stop. When I hung out with the hippies, I was too old to be a hippie, but I hung out with them, and I was poor enough. I looked like a hippie. So.
I think if compromise means practical, it's okay, but sometimes we use this word compromise to kind of hide, excuse or deceive ourselves.
Yes, right.
Try to not to do the right thing.
Yeah, right.
So
That's what I'm saying.
we must be careful about using that word.
Yeah, it's my thing with many questions. For me, it's a loaded question because I run into it so often. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?